all right. Welcome back. Welcome back. Grand Rising, everyone. I hope everyone is doing good. Had a good rest. Um, Today is a continuation of yesterday's video on Mayday and the spring sacrifices. So I'm touching on the different locations as far as archaeoastronomical sites, which are sites that are basically located under different star formations around the world, or specifically in America. We're just going to stay in America for now, so that you can get an idea of what God is upset by when it comes to this idolatry that the people have committed. You have to ask yourself, when you go into history, why were certain places in America flooded or set to fire, which they have completely lied to us about. So let us continue. Again, I'm going to stay in the United States for now, and the places that are close by, like Hawaii or coastal islands or whatever. So this is a list of sites where claims for the use of archaeoastronomy have been made, sorted by country. The International Council on Monuments and Sites, ICOMOS, and the International Astronomical Union, IAU, jointly published a thematic study on heritage sites of astronomy and archaeoastronomy to be used as a guide to UNESCO in its evaluation of the cultural importance of archaeoastronomical sites around the world, which discussed sample sites and provided categories for the classification of archaeoastronomical sites. The editors, Clive Ruggles and Michelle Cott, proposed that archaeoastronomical sites be considered in 4 categories: generally accepted, 2 debated among specialists, 3 unproven, and 4 completely refuted. So in Canada, petroforms of North America are shapes and patterns made by lining up large rocks on the open ground made by various Native American and First Nation tribes in North America. They are believed to have been made as astronomical calendars. And we're going to do Egypt too, since Egypt is America. So in Egypt, Abu Simbel, the axis of the temple, was positioned by the ancient Egyptian architects in such a way that twice a year, on October 20th and February 20th, the rays of the sun would penetrate the sanctuary and illuminate the sculpture on the back wall, except for the statue of Ptah, the god connected with the underworld, who always remained in the dark. And remember that the enemy shall be cast into outer darkness. So Nabta Playa is an archaeological site in southern Egypt containing what may be among the world's earliest known archaeoastronomical devices from the 5th millennium BC. These include alignments of stones that may have indicated the rising of certain stars, and a calendar circle that indicates the approximate direction of summer solstice sunrise. And then there's the precinct of Amun-Ra, which they do not give any information. Okay, so Mexico, we have Calakmul, Cantona, Canada or Canada de la Virgen, Casas Grandes, Chichen Itza, or the Caracol is theorized to be a proto-observatory with doors and windows aligned to astronomical events, specifically around the path of Venus as it traverses the heavens. And the main pyramid, El Castillo, the Temple of Kukulkan, displays the appearance of a snake crawling down the pyramid at the spring equinox. And also Koba. Zibel Calton, the spring equinox, the sun rises so that it shines directly through one window of the temple and out of the other. Ikil or Aikil, Hierophany, where the sunrise on the day of the solar zenith transit aligns with the summit of Ikil structure 1 as viewed from an observation point within Ikil Cave 1. Next is Izamal and Mitla, Monte Alban, the Zenith Tube, Palenque, La Quemada, El Tajin or Tajin, Teotihuacan, the pecked cross circles as survey markers, Tulum, Uxmal, Venus alignment of the governor's palace, Xochicalco, the Zenith Tube, and Yagul. In the United States, we have America's Stonehenge in New Hampshire, Anderson Mounds, Anderson, Indiana, Bighorn Medicine Wheel, and when you listen to these names, remember the locations or the people that are mentioned as far as when the beast arises from the sea, the Bighorn and the Little Horn. So Cahokia, what we talked about yesterday, the large Mississippian culture site with numerous solar and other alignments. Cahokia Woodhenge, the equinox and summer solstice sunrise, winter solstice sunset aligned timber circle. Mound 72, summer solstice sunrise and winter solstice sunset aligned burial mound. Casa Malpai archaeological site, Springerville, Arizona, summer solstice at noon and sunset. Chaco Canyon, cardinal orientations, meridian alignment, interpueblo alignments, also the 3 slab site atop Vajada Buttes in Chaco Canyon, which marks the solstices. Then Chimney Rock Archaeological Area near Pagosa Springs, Colorado. Next is Crack Cave at Picture Canyon, Colorado in Comanche National Grassland. Next is the Emerald Mound and Village Site in Lebanon, Illinois. Halit on Bainbridge Island in Washington State. Next is Hovenweep Castle. Next is Holly Solstice Panel in Hovenweep National Monument. Next, Moorhead Circle, the Timber Circle in Ohio. Then Octagon Earthworks. Next, the Serpent Mound. Then the Sky Stone near Natchez Trail in Washington State. Then Wally's Dome in Sacramento Mountains, New Mexico. So America's Stonehenge is a privately owned tourist attraction and archaeological site consisting of a number of large rocks and stone structures scattered around roughly 30 acres or 12 hectares within the town of Salem, New Hampshire, in the United States. It is open to the public for a fee as part of a recreational area, which includes snowshoe trails and an alpaca farm. A number of hypotheses exist as to the origin and purpose of the structures. One viewpoint is a mixture of land use practices of local farmers in the 18th and 19th centuries and construction of structures by owner William Goodwin, an insurance executive who purchased the area in 1937. Some claim that the site has a pre-Columbian European origin, but this is regarded as pseudo-archaeological. Archaeologist David Starbuck has said it is widely believed that Goodwin may have created much of what is visible at the site today. The site was first dubbed Mystery Hill by William Goodwin, like Mystery Babylon. This was the official name of the site until 1982, when it was renamed America's Stonehenge, a term coined in a news article in the early 1960s. The rebranding was an effort to separate it from roadside oddity sites and to reinforce the idea that it is an ancient archaeological site. The area is named after Stonehenge in England, although there is no evidence of cultural or historical connection between the two. It is mentioned as Mystery Hill on New Hampshire historical marker number 72. And again, when we get to this number 72, like the Mound 72 in the Cahokia, as I was talking about in the previous video. Now, this is historical marker number 72. Solomon had, 72 demons or 72 legions of demons, however it goes, but remember that number. So, in history, archaeologists' radiocarbon analysis of charcoal on the site shows that there were humans occupying the area 4,000 years ago, thousands of years before colonial settlers came to North America in 1492. In 1982, David Stewart Smith, director of restoration at Mystery Hill, conducted an excavation of a megalith found in a stone quarry to the north of the main site. His research team excavated the quarry site under the supervision of the New Hampshire state archaeologists and discovered hundreds of chips and flakes from stone. They concluded that this was evidence of tool manufacture consistent with American Indian lithic techniques, although no date could be ascertained. Archaeologist Curtis Runnels stated, "No Bronze Age artifacts have been found there. In fact, no one has found a single artifact of European origin from that period anywhere in the New World." The surface of the stone suggests that it was quarried with percussion techniques, indicating that the stone was modeled by indigenous stone workers as it was sculpted by indigenous stone tools rather than the metal tools that were used by European settlers. Some also speculate that the structure is an accurate astronomical calendar that can be used to predict lunar and solar events in North America. In fact, the remains of a Native American wigwam have been found in the area, such as a canoe that was made by burning out the inside of a pine log. That dates 300 years back, and 2 fire pits that date back to 2,000 years ago. Various Native American tools and pottery have also been found on the site. The site first appears in print in the 1907 History of Salem, New Hampshire. Jonathan Patty's Cave, he had a house in these woods 70 years ago, took town paupers before the town farm was bought. This is a wild but beautiful spot among rough boulders and soft pines about which the most weird and fantastic tale might be woven. There are several caves still intact, which the owner used for storage purposes. Many believe that Patty built the site in the 19th century, and no unequivocal pre-Columbian European artifacts have been found there. American horror writer H.P. Lovecraft was an enthusiast for New England megalith sites, and he visited Mystery Hill sometime between 1928 and the 1930s. The site is popularly attributed as inspiration for his story, The Dunwich Horror. Scholars, however, place Lovecraft's visit too late to have inspired the 1929 story. In 2019, the site was vandalized with power tools, with police saying the person may have been trying to reenact the scene from a fictional work. On March 4th, 2021, New Hampshire State Police arrested a member of the online group Kanan and charged him with criminal mischief. The sacrificial stone. There is a so-called sacrificial stone which contains grooves on site that some say channeled blood, but it closely resembles lye leaching stones found on many old farms that were used to extract lye from wood ashes, the first step in the manufacture of soap. The sacrificial stone could have also been a cider press bedstone, a common tool among colonial farmers in New England, the grooves in the table serving to collect the cider. The hoax. The site's history is muddled partly because of the activities of William Goodwin, who became convinced that the location was proof that Irish monks, the Chaldees, had lived there long before the time of Christopher Columbus, and he sought to publicize the concept. He held a strong belief that the site was built by Irish monks, and because of this, he rearranged many stones to fit his theory. The site has been altered by stone quarrying and also by Goodwin and others who wanted to move the stones to what they considered to be their original locations. Goodwin might have been responsible for much of what can now be seen. Many of the stones have drill marks from the quarrying that took place on the site. The myth that Irish people came to North America spawned from a story about an Irish priest named Saint Brendan, who was said to have sailed to North America in the late 500s or early 600s. It was because of this myth that Goodwin and others believed the site to be built by Irish monks. However, there is absolutely no archaeological evidence of this ever happening, without which the myth cannot be confirmed. Barry Fell, in the book America BC, Ancient Settlers in the New World, published in 1976 and revised in 1986, provides evidence of occupation in pre-Columbian times based on astronomically linked positioning of stones and claims of Ogham, writing in Celto-Iberian dialects. However, Barry Fell's specialty was marine biology, and though he wrote about archaeology and epigraphy, experts have widely deemed his writings to be pseudo-archaeological. The site has been featured or mentioned on a number of television programs, including American History Channel TV series Secrets of the Ancient World, which aired on January 14, 2002, in which Boston University archaeology professor Curtis Runnels refuted the theory that it was built by Celts in ancient history. In Search Of, TV series which focused on investigating mysterious phenomena, the show presented the theory that the site was of ancient Minoan origin. The episodes aired on April 24, 1977. Next, we have Mounds State Park. Mounds State Park is a state park near Anderson, Madison County, Indiana, featuring Native American heritage and 10 ceremonial mounds built by the prehistoric Adena culture, indigenous peoples of eastern North America, and also used centuries later by Hopewell culture inhabitants. It is separate from and about 79 miles northwest of the similarly named Mounds State Recreation Area near Brookville, Franklin County, Indiana. The park receives about 400,000 visitors annually. The park is one of 14 Indiana state parks that are in the path of totality for the 2024 solar eclipse, with the park having 3 minutes and 45 seconds of totality. The mounds. The largest earthwork, the Great Mound, is believed to have been constructed around 160 BC. The Great Mound is a circular earth enclosure with an internal ditch and south to southwest entrance. The earthworks measure 394 feet, or 120.1 meters across from bank to bank. The 9-foot tall, or 3-meter embankment is 63 feet, 19 meters wide at its base, and the ditch is 10.5 feet, or 3.2 meters deep, and 60 feet, 18.3 meters across at its top. The central platform is 138 feet, 42 meters across, and was occupied by a 4-foot high, or 1.2 meter central mound, 30 feet or 9 meters in diameter. One particular mound at the Anderson site has a sequence of clay platforms, each deliberately covered by a layer of ash. Earthworks. The term earthworks includes any structure made from the earth. In Native American studies, there are 3 primary types: mounds, circular enclosures, and complexes. All are found in central Indiana and in the state park. Mounds State Park has a complex of enclosures, both circular and rectangular. There are 7 enclosures and 4 additional earthworks, which have been divided into 2 groups: the northern complex and the southern complex. The Great Mound enclosure is the dominant structure in the park and the southern group. The Great Mound is approximately 300 feet, 91 meters across, and consists of an outer embankment 9 feet, 2.7 meters high, and 63 feet, 19 meters wide, surrounding a 60 feet, 18 meter wide ditch that is 10.5 feet, 3.2 meters deep. The central platform, 138 feet, 42 meters, is diameter with a central mound, 4 feet, 1.2 meters high, and 30 meters, 98 feet in diameter. The central mound was excavated in 1968 and 69 and found to have 3 clay layers, each with ashes, showing a succession of use periods. The complex has been dated to 160 BCE, though 50 CE through 50 CE. These dates are obtained through radiocarbon dating and some artifacts. A nearby log tomb was found with a platform pipe typical of Hopewell styles from 50 CE. Post-hole remnants were dated to 60 BCE and 230 CE. Radiocarbon dates from excavated material of the Great Mound established 160 BEC plus or minus 90 for the embankment. The neighboring Fiddleback Mound was dated to 120 BCE plus or minus 70. Notable features. In 1900, a series of strange, misshapen skeletons were unearthed from similar mounds in nearby Alexandria, Indiana. This brought thousands of tourists from around the Midwest. In 1910, several locals admitted to stealing chimpanzee skeletons from the nearby Muncie Zoo's Monkey House. In 1915, the skeletons were sold to a local museum, which burned down in 1919. What is now Mounds State Park was the location of an amusement park that operated from 1897 until 1929. While the amusement park exploited the native-made mounds, it also helped to protect them by making them a point of regional pride and a destination. Otherwise, they might have been plundered or otherwise destroyed. When the Great Depression hit, the property was sold to the Madison County Historical Society, which transferred ownership to the state of Indiana, after which it became Mounds State Park. Canoeing is also available in Mounds State Park on the White River. Next is the Medicine Wheel or Medicine Mountain National Historic Landmark, formerly known as the Big Horn Medicine Wheel. This is a medicine wheel located in the Big Horn National Forest in the U.S. state of Wyoming. The Medicine Wheel at Medicine Mountain is a large stone structure made of local white limestone laid upon a bedrock of limestone. It is both a place of sacred ceremony and scientific inquiry. It is in native science, these uses are not distinguished as separate as they are in Western science. The cultural history of the Bighorn Mountains, home to the Bighorn Medicine Wheel, dates back over 10,000 years. Cultural purposes. No indigenous people have publicly claimed to have built the Bighorn Medicine Wheel. During negotiations to include the Bighorn Medicine Wheel to the registry for National Historic Landmark and Sacred Site status, the Crow stated that the wheel was already present when they came into the area. However, the wheel rests within the Crow homeland, an area that the Crow say was given to them by the Creator when No Vitals, the visionary Crow leader, circa 1400 to 1600, had his vision of stars descending into tobacco blossoms while he fasted and prayed on the highest mountain in the Bighorns or Cloud Peak. Oral history from several indigenous nations sets the Bighorn Medicine Wheel as already existing, having been built by ancient ancestors or people without iron. The Bighorn Medicine Wheel is a sacred site to many people of many nations. Although the wheel was built high above the Bighorn Basin, and the climb up from the basin takes effort, a wide and deep-cut ancient trail takes the traveler directly to the wheel. In winter, when the modern asphalt road is covered in snow and closed for the season, one can still make one's way by foot up the old trail from Five Springs Campground. Stephen C. Sims of the Chicago Field Museum, upon examining the wheel in 1903, surmised that the travoy trail or road must have been well traveled for long periods in the past to acquire its deeply cut edges. The Bighorn Mountains are high above the hot summers of the basin. In 1887, the Tukudeka elder Agreda said her people chose to live high in the Bighorns to escape the flies and human conflict. Little People and Vision Quest. The Arapaho called the Bighorn Medicine Wheel Hai Inunoti, A detailed account of ceremonial use of the bighorn medicine wheel by the Arapaho was related in 1993 by Paul Moss in a landmark of Native American oral tradition. Tom Yellowtail Crow told the story of Burnt Face building a medicine wheel in the Bighorn Mountains and receiving help from the Little People. After the Little People healed his face, Burnt Face came down from the Bighorns, rejoined his people, and built what is now called the Fort Smith Wheel. This wheel has similar stellar and solar alignments to the Bighorn medicine wheel, adjusted for landscape changes and latitude. Who is Burnt Face? We will have to find out later. The measurements. The structure is located at an altitude of 9,642 feet or 2,939 meters near the summit of Medicine Mountain. It is a pre-Columbian structure built from roughly loaf-sized stones gathered from the surrounding area. The structure consists of a circular rim, 80 feet or 24.3 meters in diameter, 28 spokes extending from the rim to the center, and a series of 7 stone circles or cairns. Cairn O is at the center of the structure and is about 10 feet, near 3 meters in diameter. Cairns A through F are at or near the rim and are considerably smaller. Astronomical alignments. The Bighorn medicine wheel is one of 4 or 5 astronomically complex wheels that are publicly known to exist in the Rocky Mountain region. It is a type termed subgroup 6, a prominent central stone cairn surrounded by a stone ring. 2 or more interior stone lines connect the stone ring to the cairn. By John Brumley. Another of the subgroup type is the Majorville wheel in Alberta, Canada. The Majorville wheel, with a similar complex design matching the Bighorn medicine wheel, has been dated archaeologically to 3200 BC. Smaller, less complex wheels may have astronomical significance, such as solstice alignments and east-west orientation. The larger complex wheels are capable of tracking several different cosmic cycles, including the precession of the equinoxes, the moon's phases, lunar and solar eclipse cycles, and planets' orbital cycles. These astronomical wheels mirror the north ecliptic polar region of the sky and are useful as celestial grids to track changes over millennial time periods. Astronomer John Eddy investigated the Bighorn medicine wheel's structure in 1972 and made a number of important discoveries, publishing his findings in Astronomical Alignment of the Bighorn Medicine Wheel, Science 184 in 1974, pages 1031 through 1043. He found that cairns E and O were aligned in the direction of summer solstice sunrise, using cairn E for a backsite and cairn O as a foresight, and that cairns C and O were aligned in the direction of summer solstice sunset, using C as a backsite and O as a foresight. Further, he found that cairn pairs FO, FA, and FB correspond to the rising points of the stars Sirius, Aldebaran, and Rigel, respectively. Observing the first yearly heliacal rising of these stars would have been an effective tool for determining the progress of the solar year as the first heliacal rise of a star occurs on the same date relative to the solstices each year. Rising positions of stars change very slowly over the centuries due to the Earth's precession, so the directions of these Carn pairs can be used to project at what date they aligned best with the rising points of these stars. The FA Aldebaran alignment would have worked best between AD 1200 and AD 1700. Further, precession changes the date of first heliacal rise or heliacal rise. Although today the first heliacal rise of Aldebaran is a few days after the summer solstice, between AD 1200 and 1700, the first heliacal rise of Aldebaran would have been just before the summer solstice, allowing an observer to predict the coming of this event. Astronomer Jack Robinson from the University of South Florida has further proposed that Carn pair FD was used to observe the rising of the star Fomalhaut, which would have lined up with its rising point between AD 1050 and AD 1450, when Fomalhaut had its first heliacal rise roughly a month before the summer solstice. A carbon date for the Bighorn medicine wheel comes from a piece of wood found in Carn F, corresponding to an age of no more than 220 years, roughly in the middle of the 18th century. However, this date can only be considered as a minimum age, as the wood may have become lodged in the cairn after construction. Stated by Don Gray in his summary report, page 317 of the 1958 Wyoming Archaeology Society's excavation of the wheel, in the large cairn on the northwest side of the structure was found a piece of wood pinned down between the courses of stone in the wall. A sample was taken for dating. Other wheels. In 1903, Stephen Sims of the Chicago Field Museum published a scientific paper on his visit to the wheel. His diagram looks only slightly similar to the Bighorn medicine wheel that is now a historic landmark. More than one medicine wheel existed in the Bighorn Mountains previous to 1916. Cut Ear, a crow guide, would accompany people to wheels in the Bighorn Mountains. One article in the Sheridan Post talks of finding another wheel about 60 miles from the first wheel. Name change. The site was declared a National Historic Landmark in 1970 and renamed as the Medicine Wheel or Medicine Mountain National Historic Landmark in 2011. Now back to Mound 72. Mound 72 is a small ridgetop mound located roughly 850 meters or 2,790 feet. You have the 72 and 27 inverse. To the south of Monk's Mound at Cahokia Mounds near Collinsville, Illinois. Early in the site's history, the location began as a circle of 48 large wooden posts known as a wood hinge. What is that? 12 times 4? And 72 is 12 times 6. If I'm not mistaken. The wood hinge was later dismantled and a series of mortuary houses, platform mounds, mass burials, and eventually the ridgetop mound erected in its place. The mound was the location of the beaded burial, an elaborate burial of an elite personage that thought to have been one of the rulers of Cahokia, accompanied by the graves of several hundred retainers and sacrificial victims. Mound 72 Woodhenge. Early in the history of Cahokia, the portion of the site containing mounds 72 and 96 was the location of a wood hinge, a ceremonial area with a 412 feet, 126 meter in diameter circle of 48 upright wooded posts. Archaeologists date the placement of at least one of the posts to approximately 950 CE. Archaeological research has shown that 4 of the posts were at the cardinal locations of north, south, east, and west, the eastern and western posts marking the position of the equinox, sunrise, and sunset. 4 other posts in the circle were shown to be at the summer solstice, sunrise, and sunset, and the winter solstice, sunrise, and sunset position. This setup is nearly identical to the diameter and post positions of Woodhenge 3, one of 5 successive wood hinges built in another location at Cahokia, differing only in that Woodhenge 3 was 2 feet or 0.61 meters smaller in diameter. Considering the size of the circle and the fact that the post holes themselves could be as much as 1 meter or 3.3 feet in diameter, this discrepancy is almost negligible. The placement of the 2 mounds at the location and the directions in which they are oriented correspond to several of the solstice marking posts. The post nearest the later elite burial of the bird band is the location that marked the summer solstice sunrise at the times of the site's use. The early stages of the mounds were actually constructed around the post, although at a later point the posts were removed. Besides their celestial marking functions, the wood hinges also carried religious and ritual meaning that is reflected in their stylized depiction as a cross-encircled motif on ceremonial beakers, connected with black drink ceremonialism. One prominent example has markers added to the winter sunrise and sunset positions. Mound 72 is a ridgetop mound, one of only 6 recorded at the Cahokia site. Unlike the other ridgetop mounds, which are aligned east-west and north-south, as are most other features at the large site, Mound 72 is aligned 30 degrees off the east-west line. This alignment is the same as the summer solstice sunrise, winter solstice sunset line for this latitude. Near the end of the late emergent Mississippian Edelhart phase, or the beginning of the early Mississippian Loman phase, 1000 to 1050 CE, 2 small platform mounds were constructed around several of the wood hinge posts, one of them the position marking the summer solstice sunrise position. These mounds were expanded and eventually merged and covered over, being reshaped in the process into the final Mound 72 ridgetop mound. Mound 72 sub 1, bird band burial. The beginnings of the mounds were the interment of several elite personages oriented to the summer solstice sunrise post. This post is aligned with the north-south axis with a point on the southwest corner of Monk's Mound. The post had been replaced several times, including at least one episode after the beginning of mound construction. 5 meters, 16 feet west of the post was the burial of a tall man in his 40s, now thought to have been an important early Cahokian ruler. The body was placed with his feet to the northwest on an elevated platform covered by a bed of more than 20,000 marine shell disc beads arranged in the shape of a falcon, with the bird's head appearing beneath and beside the man's head and its wings and tail beneath his arms and legs. This burial is now known as the beaded burial or the Birdman burial. Below the Birdman was another man buried facing downward. The Birdman was buried with several other retainers and elaborate grave goods, including mica and other exotic minerals, copper sheaths, thought to be the remains of copper-covered chunky sticks, a cache of chunky stones, and hundreds of finely made arrowheads collected from throughout the Mississippian world, specifically caches from Tennessee, southern Illinois, Wisconsin, and a batch from the Fairway, Catawba, Mississippian peoples in Oklahoma. The arrowheads strongly indicated that Cahokia had extensive trade links in North America. The falcon warrior or birdman is a common motif in Mississippian culture and is even represented by other finds at Cahokia in the form of two small stone tablets with avian human imagery. This burial clearly had powerful iconographic significance to the peoples of Cahokia. After the burial, the location was covered over with Mound 72 Sub 1, a small platform mound oriented in an east-west axis with a ramp projecting to the east and another projecting west toward the summer solstice sunset post. The summer sunrise post was located in the center of the eastern side of the mound. Mound 72 Sub 2 and 72 Sub 3. This mound was constructed precisely over the remains of a dismantled charnel house that was thought to have been erected at roughly the same time as the wood hinge post, which it is next to. Entered in the mound were two recently deceased men and several bundled burials, probably the previous residents of the charnel house who had waited for the elite personages to die in order to be entered with them. Over this first phase, a 46 feet, 14 meter square platform with 2 levels and ramp on its eastern side was constructed. The next episode of construction at this location involved a pit being dug into the mound and a cache of various grave goods being deposited in it. A large rectangular pit was dug into the southeast corner of the mound, and a mass burial of 24 women was made in it. A new layer of fill was added to the mound, and it was extended to the southeast toward Mound 72 Sub 1 for a ramp or extension over the mass burial. The next episode of construction involved 3 stages. A small platform was constructed near the southeastern ramp, and 4 young males with their arms interlocked and missing their hands and skulls were laid out on the platform. Some researchers have concluded that the 4 men may represent the 4 cardinal directions. In a pit excavated next to these 4 men were placed the bodies of a large group of young women. This mass grave contained the remains of 53 females ranging in age between 15 to 30 years of age, arranged in 2 layers separated by matting. The young women show evidence of having been strangled before being arranged in neat rows in the pit. Analysis of bones and dental traits of these women have led archaeologists to believe these individuals were not from the same social class and ethnic group as other individuals entered in the mound. Non-metric dental traits have suggested that these individuals were not from the Cahokia area and were possibly immigrants new to the area. Analysis of specific carbon isotope and nitrogen isotope ratios left by maize consumption in the bones and cartilage of the women, as well as pathologies indicative of poor health and nutritional stress, have led researchers to also conclude they were of a lower social status than elite burials in the mound, consuming more maize and less animal protein than elite individuals. This entire construction was then covered and extended even further toward Mound 72 Sub 1, and now dubbed by archaeologists as Mound 72 Sub 3. Next to this mound to the southwest, another mass burial was made. This burial is the most grisly found at the site, containing 39 men and women who appear to have been violently killed. Before mass interment, a pit was dug and lined with white sand. The victims were then killed and thrown over the edge of the pit. These people showed signs of meeting a violent end, including several being incompletely decapitated, some with fractured skulls and others with fractured jawbones. The evidence shows that some of these individuals were buried alive. From the vertical position of some of the fingers, which appear to have been digging in the sand, it is apparent that not all of the victims were dead when they were entered, that some had been trying to pull themselves out of the mass bodies. The presence of arrowheads in the back of some of these victims, coupled with the beheadings and other evidence of violent death, has led some researchers to conclude that these victims show evidence of warfare or were even the losers of a rebellion against the rulers of Cahokia, possibly even objectors to the earlier sacrifices of the young women. On top of them were the remains of 15 elite individuals laid out upon litters made from cedar poles and cane matting. Radiocarbon dating of the cedar poles used for the litters in the top layer burials in this pit determined that this burial was made approximately 100 years after the wood hinge circle had been constructed, or in approximately 1030 CE. Numerous secondary bundled burials of the bones of individuals previously stored in a charnel house were also made into the mound. After a few final intrusive burials into the southwestern edge, Sub 3 and Sub 1 were covered over in a blanket of earth and given its distinctive ridge-top shape. All of the burials in the mound are located within an area circumscribed by the arc of the wood hinge circle. In total, roughly 272 individuals have been entered in Mound 72. Again, we have the 2772 reverse, forward, and backward. And all 6 separate episodes of burial had happened at the mound, stretching over a roughly 100-year period. Researchers theorized that this could represent the lineage of a prominent family, along with many retainers and sacrifices. Scholars believed almost 62% of the over 270 people entered in the mound were sacrificial victims, based on signs of ritual execution, the method of burial, and other factors. Similarities to historical events. A similar ritual human sacrifice of retainers and commoners upon the death of an elite personage is attested in the historical record among the last remaining full Mississippian culture in the southeastern U.S., the Natchez. Upon the death of Tattooed Serpent in 1725, the war chief and younger brother of the Great Sun, or Chief of the Natchez. 2 of his wives, one of his sisters, nicknamed La glorious by the French, his first warrior, his doctor, his head servant and the servant's wife, his nurse, and a craftsman of war clubs all chose to die and be entered with him, as well as several old women and an infant who was strangled by his parents. Great honor was associated with such a sacrifice, and their kin was held in high esteem. After a funeral procession with the chief's body carried on a litter made of cane matting and cedar poles ended at the temple, which was located on top of a low platform mound. The retainers, with their faces painted red and accompanied by their relatives dressed up in their finest garments, were drugged with large doses of nicotine and ritually strangled. I'm getting SpongeBob the Strangler. Tattooed serpent was then buried in a trench inside the temple floor, and the retainers were buried in other locations atop the mound surrounding the temple. After a few months' time, the bodies were disinterred and their defleshed bones were stored as bundle burials in the temple. Mound 96. We know that the queen recently died at 96. 96 is also a part of the Fibonacci sequence codes and Tesla codes 369 and all that good stuff. Mound 96 is a virtual mirror image of Mound 72 sub 1. It was another small, nearly square platform mound measuring approximately 15 meters, 49 feet wide at its base, and a projecting ramp on its eastern side, giving it a T shape. It was built around the location of the winter sunset pole of the wood hinge and oriented along the north, south, and east-west alignment common at Cahokia, with the ramp facing the winter solstice sunrise pole. The ramp starts at 5 meters, 16 feet wide at its base, but narrows to 50 centimeters, 1.6 feet in width at its top. Radiocarbon dating and ceramic analysis of sherds found in the mound place its beginning construction date to the Loman phase, 1000 to through 1050 CE, at roughly the same time as Mound 72. The mound, also like Mound 72, was finished with a hard cap of black clay, thought by archaeologists to have been engineered by its builders as a protective layer to protect the mound from erosion. The mound is thought to contain burials as well, but due to new federal laws concerning the excavation of Native American remains, the portions of the mound suspected to have burials have not been excavated. Excavations. In the 1960s, archaeologist Melvin L. Fowler noticed that the northeastern corner of the unusually aligned Mound 72 was located on a north-south axis aligned with the southwestern corner of Monk's Mound and the western edge of Mound 49. An east-west oriented ridgetop mound located within the Grand Plaza area of downtown Cahokia. After discussions with Warren Whitry, the discoverer of the Cahokia wood hinge, about the north-south axis alignment and the mound's longitudinal alignment along the axis of the solstices, he hypothesized that a large post may have marked the location. After getting funding, he began a series of excavations at the mound in 1967 that lasted into the early 1970s. The post pit hole was found where he had predicted it would be, as were several others in an arc to the northwest, along with the spectacular series of burials located within and under the mound. Mound 96, a previously unnoticed small mound to the southwest, was discovered and numbered at this time. By 1977, Fowler was again studying aerial photos and maps of the location when he noticed that measurements concerning the two mounds and associated post holes corresponded nearly exactly with circumference and diameter measurements from Woodhenge 3. He plotted a set of post holes predictions and eventually received funding to excavate in the early 1990s. In excavations lasting throughout the 1990s, he excavated parts of Mound 96 and several projected post hole locations looking for proof of a hypothesized southern Woodhenge at Cahokia. Not all archaeologists associated with Cahokia agreed with his conclusions and predictions at the time, although weather-related problems, low-lying terrain with flooding issues, and other factors made the endeavor difficult. Fowler eventually located several other post pits at or near their predicted locations, including the winter solstice sunset position under Mound 96. The Casa Malpai, or Malpais, is an archaeological site of the ancestral Puebloans located near the town of Springerville, Arizona. The site is a nationally recognized archaeological site and was declared a National Historic Landmark in 1964. Casa Malpai was built around 1260 and was inhabited until about 1400, meaning that the site dates from the Pueblo III to the Pueblo IV era. It is one of the latest dated Mogollon sites, or Mogollon sites. The name Casa Malpai is Spanish for House of the Bad Lands. The Springerville volcanic field contains over 400 volcanoes within a 50-mile radius of Springerville, making it the third largest volcanic field in the continental United States. Unique and unusual features characterize the site. The Great Kiva, painstakingly constructed of volcanic rock, is the centerpiece. A steep basalt staircase set into a crevice of the high basalt cliff wall leads to the top of the mesa. Both the Hopi and Zuni Indian tribes still consider Casa Malpai a sacred ancestral place. The site is at an elevation of 7,000 feet, and the Pueblo is perched atop terraces on front of basalt cliffs. These cliffs were formed from lava flow from an ancient volcano. Around 1240, a 60-room Pueblo, solar calendar, and Great Kiva were built by the people. The site was believed to be abandoned by 1350. Artifacts were excavated and collected over time. The Casa Malpai collection includes 156 boxes of potsherds and other artifacts from the ruins. Special butterfly collection. Most of the artifacts found in the 1990s are displayed in the Casa Malpai Museum. The solar calendar. This feature consists of a low stone wall enclosing a space 26 meters in diameter with 5 gates. Part of the structure has been restacked, indicating an approximate possible height of 1.2 meters. An opening on the structure's northern side appears to be oriented to true north, Zoll 2012. Another on the southwest side of the structure is offset to allow a distinctive rectangular shaft of light to enter in a direct line with the wall during sunset at summer solstice. At winter solstice, the shaft of light once again enters through the gate and extends to about the middle of the enclosure. During the equinoxes, the sun enters again through the gate and produces a distinctive rectangular shaft of light. Outside this circular feature is a bear claw petroglyph, which at vernal equinox sunset fits into a shaft of light produced by a natural rock grouping. Both the Hopi and Zuni have bear clans or bear societies who may have created this image for reasons unknown. The discovery. The first visit to Casa Malpai by a professional anthropologist was in 1883 when Frank Cushing, an anthropologist living at Zuni Pueblo, New Mexico, visited a site at El Valle Redondo on the Colorado Chiquito and was impressed by what he termed the fissure-type pueblo he found there. In his journal, he sketched dry masonry bridging fissures upon which the pueblo is constructed. Casa Malpai Visitor Center and Museum. Located on Main Street in Springerfield, Arizona, the museum displays artifacts found at Casa Malpai and offers guided tours of the site that originate at the museum. Chaco Culture National Historic Park. This is a United States National Historic Park in the American Southwest, hosting a concentration of pueblos. The park is located in northwestern New Mexico between Albuquerque and Farmington in a remote canyon cut by the Chaco Wash. Containing the most sweeping collection of ancient ruins north of Mexico, the park preserves one of the most important pre-Columbian cultural and historical areas in the United States. Between AD 900 and 1150, Chaco Canyon was a major center of culture for the ancestral Puebloans. Chacoans quarried sandstone blocks and hauled timber from great distances, assembling 15 major complexes that remained the largest buildings ever built in North America until the 19th century. Evidence of archaeoastronomy at Chaco has been proposed, with the sun dagger petroglyph at Fajada Butte a popular example. Many Chacoan buildings may have been aligned to capture the solar and lunar cycles, requiring generations of astronomical observation and centuries of skillfully coordinated construction. Climate change is thought to have led to the immigration of Chacoans and the eventual abandonment of the canyon, beginning with a 50-year drought commencing in 1130. Comprising a UNESCO World Heritage Site located in the arid and sparsely populated Four Corners region, the Chacoan cultural sites are fragile. Concerns of erosion caused by tourists have led to the closure of Fajada Butte to the public. These sites are considered sacred ancestral homelands by the Hopi and Pueblo people, who maintain oral accounts of their historical migration from Chaco and their spiritual relationship to the land. Although park preservation efforts can conflict with Native religious beliefs, tribal representatives work closely with the National Park Service to share their knowledge and respect the heritage of the Chacoan culture. The park is on the Trails of the Ancients Byway, one of the designated New Mexico scenic byways. What does the Bible say? You should be a proverb and a byword. This is a byway of those bywords. Chaco Canyon lies within the San Juan Basin, atop the vast Colorado Plateau, surrounded by Chusca, the Chusca Mountains to the west, the San Juan Mountains to the north, and the San Pedro Mountains to the east. Ancient Chicoans drew up dense forests of oak, pinyon, ponderosa pine, and juniper to obtain timber and other resources. The canyon itself, located within lowlands circumscribed by dune fields, ridges, and mountains, is aligned along a roughly northwest to southeast axis and is rimmed by flat massifs known as mesas. Large gaps between the southwestern cliff faces, side canyons known as rincons, were critical in funneling rain-bearing storms into the canyon and boosting local precipitation levels. The principal Chicoan complexes, such as Pueblo Bonito, Nuevo Alto, and Quinquetzo, have elevations of 6,200 to 6,440 feet, 1890 to 1960 meters. The alluvial canyon floor slopes downward to the northwest at a gentle grade of 30 feet per mile, or 6 meters per kilometer. It is bisected by the Chaco Wash, an arroyo that rarely bears water. The canyon's main aquifers were too deep to be of use to ancient Chicoans. Only several smaller and shallower sources supported the small springs that sustained them. Today, aside from occasional storm runoff coursing through arroyos, substantial surface water, springs, pools, wells, is virtually non-existent. Geology. After the Pangean supercontinent sundered during the Cretaceous period, the region became part of a shifting transition zone between a shallow inland sea, the Western Interior Seaway, and a band of plains and low hills to the west. A sandy and swampy coastline oscillated east and west, alternately submerging and uncovering the area atop the present Colorado Plateau that Chaco Canyon now occupies. The Chaco Wash flowed across the upper strata of what is now the 400-foot, 120-meter Chakra Mesa, cutting into it and gouging out a broad canyon over the course of millions of years. The mesa comprises sandstone and shale formations dating from the late Cretaceous, which are of the Mesa Verde group. The canyon bottomlands were further eroded, exposing Menifee shale bedrock. This was subsequently buried under roughly 125 feet, 38 meters of sediment. The canyon and mesa lie within the Chaco core, which is distinct from the wider Chaco Plateau, a flat region of grassland with infrequent stands of timber. As the continental divide is only 15.5 miles or 25 kilometers east of the canyon, geological characteristics and different patterns of drainage differentiate these two regions both from each other and from the nearby Chaco Slope, the Gobernador Slope, and the Chusca Valley. The climate. An arid region of high xeric scrubland and desert steppe, the canyon and wider basin average 8 inches or 200 millimeters of rainfall annually. The park averages 9.1 inch or 230 millimeters. Chaco Canyon lies on the leeward side of extensive mountain ranges to the south and west, resulting in a rain shadow effect that fosters the prevailing lack of moisture in the region. The region sees 4 distinct seasons. Rainfall is most likely between July and September, while May and June are the driest months. Orographic precipitation, which results from moisture wrung out of storm systems ascending the mountain ranges around Chaco Canyon, is responsible for most of the summer and winter precipitation, and rainfall increases with higher elevation. Chaco endures remarkable climatic extremes. Temperatures range between negative 38 and 102 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 39 and 39 degrees Celsius, and may swing 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 33 degrees Celsius in a single day. The region averages fewer than 150 frost-free days per year, and the local climate swings wildly from years of plentiful rain to prolonged drought. The heavy influence of the El Nino Southern Oscillation contributes to the canyon's fickle climate. Flora and fauna. Chicoan flora typifies that of North American high deserts. Sagebrush and several species of cactus are interspersed with dry scrub forests of pinyon and juniper, the latter primarily on the mesa tops. The canyon is far drier than other parts of New Mexico located at similar latitudes and elevations, and it lacks the temperate coniferous forest plentiful to the east. The prevailing sparseness of plants and wildlife was echoed in ancient times when overpopulation, expanding cultivation, overhunting, habitat destruction, and drought may have led the Chicoans to strip the canyon of wild plants and game. It has been suggested that even during wet periods, the canyon was able to sustain only 2,000 people. Among Chicoan mammals are the plentiful coyote or Canis latrans, mule deer, elk, and pronghorn also live within the canyon, although they are rarely encountered by visitors. Important smaller carnivores include bobcats, badgers, foxes, and 2 species of skunk. The park hosts abundant populations of rodents, including several prairie dog towns. Small colonies of bats are present during the summer. The local shortage of water means that relatively few bird species are present. These include roadrunners, large hawks, such as Cooper's hawks and American kestrels, owls, vultures, and ravens, although they are less abundant in the canyon than in wetter mountain ranges to the east. Sizable populations of smaller birds, including warblers, sparrows, and house finches, are also common. 3 species of hummingbirds are present. One is the tiny but highly pugnacious rufous hummingbird, which compete intensely with the more mild-tempered black-chinned hummingbirds for breeding habitat in shrubs or trees located near water. Western prairie rattlesnakes are occasionally seen in the backcountry, although skinks and various other lizards are far more abundant. History. Archaic early basket makers. The first people in the San Juan Basin were hunter-gatherers, the archaic early basket maker people. These small bands descended from nomadic Clovis big game hunters who arrived in the Southwest around 10,000 BC. More than 70 campsites from this period, carbon dated to the period 7000 to 1500 BC, and mostly consisting of stone chips and other leavings, were found in Atoll Cave, looks like ATL Cave, and elsewhere within Chaco Canyon, with at least one of the sites located on the canyon floor near an exposed arroyo. The archaic early basket maker people were nomadic or semi-nomadic hunter-gatherers who over time began making baskets to store gathered plants. By the end of the period, some people cultivated food. Excavation of their campsites and rock shelters has revealed that they made tools, gathered wild plants, and killed and processed game. Slab-lined storage cists indicate a change from a wholly nomadic lifestyle. Ancestral Puebloans. By 900 BC, archaic people lived at Atl Cave and similar sites. They left little evidence of their presence in Chaco Canyon. By AD 490, their descendants of the late Basket Maker II era farmed lands around Shabik Eshki village and other pit house settlements at Chaco. A small population of basket makers remained in the Chaco Canyon area. The broad arc of their cultural elaboration culminated around 800 during the Pueblo I era, when they were building crescent-shaped stone complexes, each comprising 4 to 5 residential suites, abutting subterranean kivas, large enclosed areas reserved for rites. Such structures characterized the early Pueblo people. By 850, the ancient Pueblo population, the Anasazi, from a Ute term adopted by the Navajo, denoting the ancient ones or enemy ancestors, had rapidly expanded. Groups resided in larger, more densely populated pueblos. Strong evidence attests to a canyon-wide turquoise processing and trading industry dating from the 10th century. Around then, the first section of Pueblo Bonito was built, a curved row of 50 rooms near its present north wall. Archaeogenomic analysis of the mitochondria of 9 skeletons from high-status graves in Pueblo Bonito determined that members of an elite matriline were entered here for approximately 330 years between 800 and 1130, suggesting continuity with the matrilineal succession practices of many Pueblo nations today. The cohesive Chacoan system began unraveling around 1140, perhaps triggered by an extreme 50-year drought that began in 1130. Chronic climatic instability, including a series of severe droughts, again struck the region between 1250 and 1450. Poor water management led to arroyo cutting. Deforestation was extensive and economically devastating. Timber for construction had to be hauled instead from outlying mountain ranges such as the Chusca Mountains, which are more than 50 miles, 80 kilometers to the west. Outlying communities began to depopulate, and by the end of the century, the buildings in the Central Canyon had been neatly sealed and abandoned. Some scholars suggest that violence and warfare, perhaps involving cannibalism, impelled the evacuation. Hints of such include dismembered bodies dating from Chacoan times found at 2 sites within the Central Canyon. Yet Chacoan complexes showed little evidence of being defended or defensively sited high on cliff faces or atop mesas. Only several minor sites at Chaco have evidence of the large-scale burning that would suggest enemy raids. Archaeological and cultural evidence leads scientists to believe people from this region migrated south, east, and west into the valleys and drainages of the Little Colorado River, the Rio Puerco, and Rio Grande. Anthropologist Joseph Tainter deals at length with the structure and decline of Chaco civilization in his 1988 study, the collapse of complex societies. Athabascan succession. Numic-speaking peoples, such as the Ute and Shoshone, were present on the Colorado Plateau beginning in the 12th century. Nomadic southern Athabascan-speaking peoples, such as the Apache and Navajo, succeeded the Pueblo people in this region by the 15th century. In the process, they acquired Chacoan customs and agricultural skills. Ute tribal groups also frequented the region, primarily during hunting and raiding expeditions. The modern Navajo Nation lies west of Chaco Canyon, and many Navajo live in surrounding areas. Excavation and protection. The first documented trip through Chaco Canyon was an expedition led by New Mexican Governor Jose Antonio Vizcarra. When the area was under Mexican rule, he noted several large ruins in the canyon. The American trader Josiah Gregg wrote about the ruins of Chaco Canyon, referring in 1832 to Pueblo Bonito as built of fine grit sandstone. In 1849, a U.S. Army detachment passed through and surveyed the ruins following United States acquisition of the Southwest with its victory in the Mexican War in 1848. The canyon was so remote, however, that it was scarcely visited over the next 50 years. After brief reconnaissance work by Smithsonian scholars in the 1870s, formal archaeological work began in 1896 when a party from the American Museum of Natural History, based in New York City, the Hyde Exploring Expedition, began excavating Pueblo Bonito. Spending 5 summers in the region, they sent more than 60,000 artifacts back to New York and operated a series of trading posts in the area. In 1901, Richard Wetherill, who had worked for the Hyde expedition, claimed a homestead of 161 acres, 65 ha, that included Pueblo Bonito, Pueblo del Arroyo, and Chetro Kettle. While investigating Wetherill's land claim, federal land agent Samuel J. Holsinger detailed the physical setting of the canyon and the site, noted prehistoric road segments and stairways above Chetro Kettle, and documented prehistoric dams and irrigation systems. His report went unpublished and unheeded. It urged the creation of a national park to safeguard Chacoan sites. The next year, Edgar Lee Hewitt, president of New Mexico Normal University, later named New Mexico Highlands University, mapped many Chacoan sites. Hewitt and others helped enact the Federal Antiquities Act of 1906, the first U.S. law to protect relics. It was, in effect, a direct consequence of Wetherill's controversial activities at Chaco, including amateur excavations, reuse of ruined materials for building, and a large livestock ranching operation. The act also authorized the president to establish national monuments. On March 11, 1907, Theodore Roosevelt proclaimed Chaco Canyon National Monument. Wetherill relinquished his land claims. In 1920, the National Geographic Society began an archaeological examination of Chaco Canyon and appointed Neil Judd, then 32, to head the project. After a reconnaissance trip that year, Judd proposed to excavate Pueblo Bonito, the largest ruin at Chaco. Beginning in 1921, Judd spent 7 field seasons at Chaco. Living and working conditions were Spartan at best. In his memoirs, Judd noted dryly that Chaco Canyon has its limitations as a summer resort. By 1925, Judd's excavators had removed 100,000 short tons of overburden using a term of 35 or more Indians, 10 white men, and 8 or 9 horses. Judd's team found only 69 hurts in the ruins, a puzzling discovery as winters are cold at Chaco. Judd sent A.E. Douglas more than 90 specimens for tree ring dating then in its infancy. At that time, Douglas had only a floating chronology. It was not until 1929 that a Judd-led team found the missing link. Most of the beams used at Chaco were cut between 1033 and 1092, the height of construction there. In 1949, the University of New Mexico deeded over adjoining lands to form an expanded Chaco Canyon National Monument. In return, the university maintained scientific research rights to the area. By 1959, the National Park Service had constructed a park visitor center, staff housing, and campgrounds. As a historic property of the National Park Service, the National Monument was listed on the National Register of Historic Places on October 15, 1966. In 1971, researchers Robert Lister and James Judge established the Chaco Center. A division for cultural research that functioned as a joint project between the University of New Mexico and the National Park Service. A number of multidisciplinary research projects, archaeological surveys, and limited excavations began during this time. The Chaco Center extensively surveyed the Chacoan roads, well-constructed and strongly reinforced thoroughfares radiating from the Central Canyon. The richness of the cultural remains at park sites led to the expansion of the small national monuments into the Chaco Culture National Historical Park on December 19, 1980, when an additional 13,000 acres or 5,300 ha were added to the protected area. In 1987, the park was designated a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. To safeguard Chacoan sites on adjacent Bureau of Land Management and Navajo Nation lands, the Park Service developed the multi-agency Chaco Culture Archaeological Protection Site Program. These initiatives have identified more than 2,400 archaeological sites within the current park's boundaries. Only a small percentage of these have been excavated. Management. Chaco Culture National Historical Park is managed by the National Park Service, a federal agency within the Department of the Interior. Neighboring federal lands hosting Chacoan roads are controlled by the Bureau of Land Management. In the 2002-03 fiscal year, the park's total annual operating budget was $1.434 million. The park has a visitor center featuring the Chaco Collection Museum, which has not been open to the public since being completed in 2017. An information desk, a theater, a bookstore, an observatory, and a gift shop. Visits to the Chaco collection at the Hibbins Center on the University of New Mexico Albuquerque campus can be arranged by appointment. Prior to the 1980s, archaeological excavations within current park boundaries were intensive. Compound walls were dismantled or demolished, and thousands of artifacts were extracted. Starting in 1981, a new approach, informed by traditional Hopi and Pueblo beliefs, stopped such intrusions. Remote sensing, anthropological study of Indian oral traditions, and dendrochronology, which left Chacoan relics undisturbed, were pursued. In this vein, the Chaco American Indian Consultation Committee was established in 1991 to give Navajo, Hopi, Pueblo, and other Indian representatives a voice in park oversight. Current park policy mandates partial restoration of excavated sites. Backfilling or reburying excavated sites with sand is one such means. Other measures attempt to safeguard the area's ancient ambience and mystique, such as the Chaco Night Sky program, which seeks to eliminate the effect of light pollution on the park's acclaimed night skies. Under the program, some 14,000 visitors make use of the Chaco Observatory, inaugurated in 1998, park telescopes, and astronomy-related programs. The park was named a Gold-Tier Dark Sky Park by the International Dark Sky Association in 2013. Chacoan relics outside the current park's boundaries have been threatened by development. An example was the proposed competitive leasing of federal lands in the San Juan Basin for surface coal mining beginning in 1983. As ample coal deposits abut the park, this strip mining threatened the web of ancient Chacoan roads. The year-long Chaco Roads Project thus documented the roads, which were later protected from mining. As archaeological significance extends beyond the park's boundaries, the United States Department of the Interior intends to withdraw a 10-mile buffer zone around the park from development. Sites. The Chacoans built their complexes along a 9-mile, 14-kilometer stretch of canyon floor, with the walls of some structures aligned cardinally and others aligned with the 18.6-year cycle of minimum and maximum moonrise and moonset. The Central Canyon portion of the canyon contains the largest Chacoan complexes. The most studied is Pueblo Bonito, covering almost 2 acres, 0.81 high, and comprising at least 650 rooms. It is the largest great house in parts of the complex. The structure was 4 stories high. The builders' use of pour and veneer architecture and multi-story construction necessitated massive masonry walls up to 3 feet 91 centimeters thick. Pueblo Bonito is divided into 2 sections by a wall precisely aligned to run north-south, bisecting the central plaza. A great kiva was placed on either side of the wall, creating a symmetrical pattern common to many Chacoan great houses. The scale of the complex, upon completion, rivaled that of the Colosseum. Nearby is Pueblo del Arroyo, which was founded between AD 1050 and AD 1075 and completed in the early 12th century. It sits at a drainage outlet known as South Gap. Casa Rinconada, isolated from the other central sites, sits to the south side of Chaco Wash, adjacent to a Chacoan road leading to a set of steep stairs that reach the top of Chakra Mesa. Its sole kiva stands alone, with no residential or support structures whatsoever. It did once have a 39 feet, 12 meter passageway leading from the underground kiva to several above ground levels. Chetro Kettle, located near Pueblo Bonito, bears the typical D shape of many other central complexes. Begun between 1020 and 1050, its 450 to 550 rooms shared one great kiva. Experts estimate that it took 29,135 man-hours to erect Shetro Kettle alone. Hewitt estimated that it took the wood of 5,000 trees and 50 million stone blocks. Ken Klutzo Yellow House was a medium-sized complex located 0.5 miles or 800 meters west of Pueblo Bonito. It shows strong evidence of construction and occupation by Pueblo peoples from the northern San Juan Basin. Its rectangular shape and design is related to the Pueblo II cultural group rather than the Pueblo III style or its Chicoan variant. It contains 55 rooms, 4 ground floor kivas, and a 2-story cylindrical tower that may have functioned as a kiva or religious center. Evidence of an obsidian processing industry was discovered near the village, which was erected between 1125 and 1130. Pueblo Alto is a great house of 89 rooms located on a mesa top near the middle of Chaco Canyon, 0.6 miles, 1 kilometer from Pueblo Bonito. It was begun between AD 1020 and 1050 during a wider building boom throughout the canyon. Its location made the community visible to most of the inhabitants of the San Juan Basin. Indeed, it was only 2.3 miles or 3.7 kilometers north of Tsin-Kletzen on the opposite side of the canyon. The community was the center of a bead and turquoise processing industry that influenced the development of all villages in the canyon. Shirt tool production was common. Research at the site conducted by archaeologist Tom Wins suggests only a handful of families, perhaps as few as 5 to 20, lived in the complex. This may imply that Pueblo Alto served a primarily non-residential role. Another great house, Nuevo Alto, was built on the North Mesa near Pueblo Alto. It was founded in the late 12th century, a time when the Chicoan population was declining. Outliers. Another cluster of great houses lies in Chaco's northern reaches. Among the largest in Casa Chiquita, Small House. Casa Chiquita, Small House, a village built in the 1080s when, in a period of ample rainfall, Chicoan culture was expanding. Its layout featured a smaller, squarer profile. It also lacked the open plazas and separate kivas of its predecessors. Larger, squarer blocks of stone were used in the masonry. Kivas were designed in the northern Mesa Verdean tradition. 2 miles down the canyon is Penasco Blanco White Bluff, an arc-shaped compound built atop the canyon's southern rim in 5 distinct stages between 900 and 1125. A nearby cliff painting, the Supernova Platograph, may record the sighting of the SN 1054 supernova on July 5, 1054. Pungo Pabi, located 1 mile, 1.6 kilometers from Una Vida, measured 872 feet, 266 meters in circumference. Initial probes revealed 72 ground level rooms, with structures reaching 4 stories in height. One large circular kiva has been identified. Kin Nahasbas, built in either 9th or 10th century, is sited slightly north of Una Vida. positioned at the foot of the North Mesa. Limited excavation of it has taken place. Tessin Kletsin, or Charcoal Place, a compound located on the Chakra Mesa and positioned above Casa Rencanada, is 2.3 miles, 3.7 kilometers due south of Pueblo Alto, on the opposite side of the canyon. Nearby is Hueritos Dam, a massive earthen structure that scientists believe provided Tessin Kletsin with all of its domestic water. How many planes? Just how many? The dam worked by retaining storm water runoff in a reservoir. Massive amounts of silt accumulated during flash floods would have forced the residents to regularly rebuild the dam and dredge the catchment area. Deeper in the canyon, Una Vida, or One Life, is one of the three oldest great houses. Construction began around 900. Comprising at least 2 stories and 124 rooms. It shares an arc or D-shaped design with its contemporaries, Peñasco Blanco and Pueblo Bonito, but has a unique dogleg addition made necessary by topography. It is located in one of the canyon's major side drainages near Gallo Wash and was massively expanded after 930. Wajiji, or Black Greasewood, comprising just more than 100 rooms, is the smallest of the great houses. Built between 1110 and 1115, it was the last Chicoan great house to be constructed. Somewhat isolated within the narrow wash, it is positioned 1 mile or 1.6 kilometers from neighboring Una Vida. Directly north are communities even more remote, Salmon Ruins and Aztec Ruins, sited on the San Juan and Animas rivers near Farmington, were built during a 30-year wet period commencing in 1100. Some 60 miles, 97 kilometers directly south of Chaco Canyon, on the Great South Road, lies another cluster of outlying communities. The largest, Kin Nizhoni, stands atop a 7,000-foot, 2,100 meter mesa surrounded by marshy bottomlands. Casimiro Pueblo is located on McKinley County Road 19 near Tecolote Mesa, a red sandstone mesa. It was connected to its nearby outlier Andrews Ranch by Echicoan Road. Chaco Canyon, Aztec Ruins, Salmon Ruins, and Casimiro Pueblo are on the trail of the ancient scenic byway. Ruins. Great houses. Immense complexes known as great houses embodied worship at Chaco. The Chicoans used masonry techniques unique for their time. The Chicoans used masonry techniques unique for their time, and their building constructions lasted decades and even centuries. As architectural forms evolved in centuries past, the houses kept several core traits. Most apparent is their sheer bulk, complexes averaged more than 200 rooms each, and some enclosed up to 700 rooms. Individual rooms were substantial in size, with higher ceilings than ancestral Puebloan works of preceding periods. They were well planned. Vast sections or wings erected were finished in a single stage rather than in increments. Houses generally faced the south, and plaza areas were almost always girt with edifices of sealed-off rooms or high walls. Houses often stood 4 or 5 stories tall, with single-story rooms facing the plaza. Room blocks were terraced to allow the tallest sections to compose the pueblo's rear edifice. Rooms were often organized into suites, with front rooms larger than rear, interior, and storage rooms or areas. Ceremonial structures known as kivas were built in proportion to the number of rooms in a pueblo. One small kiva was built for roughly every 29 rooms. 9 complexes each hosted an oversized great kiva, each up to 63 feet, 19 meters in diameter. T-shaped doorways and stone lintels marked all Chicoan kivas. Although simple and compound walls were often used, great houses were primarily constructed of core and veneer walls. 2 parallel load-bearing walls comprising dressed flat sandstone blocks bound in clay mortar were erected. Gaps between walls were packed with rubble, forming the wall's core. Walls were then covered in a veneer of small sandstone pieces, which were pressed into a layer of binding mud. These surfacing stones were often placed in distinctive patterns. The Chicoan structures altogether required the wood of 200,000 coniferous trees, mostly hauled on foot from mountain ranges up to 70 miles or 110 kilometers away. The meticulously designed buildings composing the larger Chicoan complexes did not emerge until around AD 1030. The Chicoans melded pre-planned architectural design, astronomical alignments, geometry, landscaping, and engineering into ancient urban centers of unique public architecture. Researchers have concluded that the complex may have had a relatively small residential population, with larger groups assembling only temporarily for annual ceremonies. Smaller sites, apparently more residential in character, are scattered near the great houses in and around Chaco. The canyon itself runs along one of the lunar alignment lines, suggesting the location was originally chosen for its astronomical significance. If nothing else, this allowed alignment with several other key structures in the canyon. Turquoise was very important to the people of Chaco. Approximately 200,000 pieces of turquoise have been excavated from the ruins of Chaco Canyon, and workshops for local manufacture of turquoise beads have been found. The turquoise was used locally for grave goods, burials, and ceremonial offerings. More than 15,000 turquoise beads and pendants accompanied 2 burials at Pueblo Bonito. Some researchers found data supporting existence of widespread trade of the turquoise. Around this time, the extended ancestral Puebloan Anansi community experienced a population and construction boom. Throughout the 10th century, Chicoan building techniques spread from the canyon to neighboring regions. By AD 1115, at least 70 outlying pueblos of Chicoan provenance had been built within the 25,000 square mile, 65,000 kilometers square, composing the San Juan Basin. Experts speculate the function of these compounds, some large enough to be considered great houses in their own right. Some suggest they may have been more than agricultural communities, perhaps functioning as trading posts or ceremonial sites. 30 such outliners spread across 65,000 square miles, 170,000 kilometers squared, are connected to the Central Canyon and to one another by an enigmatic web of 6 Chicoan road systems. Extending up to 60 miles, 97 kilometers in generally straight routes, they appear to have been extensively surveyed and engineered. Their depressed and scraped caliche beds reach 30 feet or 9.1 meters wide, earthen berms or rocks, at times composing low walls, delimit their edges. When necessary, the roads deploy steep stone stairways and rock ramps to surmount cliffs and other obstacles. Although their purpose may never be certain, archaeologist Harold Gladwin noted that nearby Navajo believed that the Anasazi built the roads to transport timber. Archaeologist Neil Judd offered a similar hypothesis. Archaeoastronomy. Sun dagger. 2 world-shaped etchings near the top of Fejada Butte compose what is called the sun dagger petroglyph that is tucked behind the eponymous rock panels of the 3 slab sites. They are symbolically focal. It consists of 2 spirals, one principal and one ancillary. The latter left-hand spiral captured both spring and fall equinoxes. Its artifice was revealed by a descending sphere of light, filtered through the slabs, that shone upon it and split it in 2. The former and larger world to its right was lit by the titular sun dagger, which bisected it through another interplay of slab and sunlight. Light struck it brilliantly as the summer sun attains its solstice midday peak. The Chicoans were said to be marking, as Anna Southier, artist, sun dagger discoverer, and leading proponent puts it, the middle of time. Each turn of the 9.25 turn large spiral was found to mark 1 year in the 18.6 year lunar excursion cycle of the rising midwinter full moon. This record is kept by a slabs cast lunar shadow whose edge strikes in succession each ring. As the full moon or minimum moon closest to the winter solstice rises, the shadow's edge precisely strikes the center of the larger spiral. It steps outward year by year, ring by ring, until it strikes the outermost edge of it during the full maximum moon again in midwinter. Fejada Butte bears 5 other petroglyphs, including a carving of a rattlesnake, other spirals, and a rectangle that are conspicuously lit by contrast between sunbeams and shadows during equinoxes or solstices. Public access to the Butte was curtailed when, in 1989, erosion from modern foot traffic was found to be responsible for one of the 3 screening slabs at the Sun Dagger site shifting out of its ancient position. The assemblage of stones has thus lost some of its former spatial and temporal precession as a solar and lunar calendar. In 1990, the screens were stabilized and placed under observation, but the wayward slab was not moved back into its original orientation. Alignment. Some parties have advanced the theory that at least 12 of the 14 principal Chicoan complexes were sited and aligned in coordination, and that each was oriented along axes that mirrored the passing of the sun and moon at visually pivotal times. The first great house known to evince fastidious proportioning and alignment was Casa Rinconada. The twinned T-shaped portals of its 10-meter, 33 feet radius Great Kiva were north-south collinear, and axes joining opposing windows pass within 10 centimeters or 4 inches of its center. The great houses of Pueblo Bonito and Chetro Kettle were found by the Solstice Project and the U.S. National Geodetic Survey to be sited along a precisely east-west line, an axis that captures the passage of the equinox sun. The lines perpendicularly bisecting their principal walls are aligned north-south, implying a possible intent to mirror the equinox midday. Pueblo Alto and Tessin-Kletzen are also north-south aligned. These two axes form an inverted cross when viewed from above. Its northbound reach is extended another 35 miles or 56 kilometers past Pueblo Alto by the Ramrod Strait Great North Road, a pilgrimage route that modern-day Pueblo Indians believe to be an allusion to myths surrounding their arrival from the distant north. Two shared latitude but diametrically opposed complexes, Pueblo Pintado and Kin Beniola, are located some 15 miles, 24 kilometers from the core buildings of the Central Canyon. Each lies on a path from the Central Canyon that is collinear with the passage and setting of the full midwinter minimum moon, which recurs every 18.6 years. Two other complexes that are less distant from Pueblo Bonito, Una Vida and Penasco Blanco, share an axis collinear with the passage of the full maximum moon. The terms minimum and maximum refer to the azimuthal extreme points in the lunar excursion cycle, or the swings in direction relative to true north that the setting full moon exhibits. It takes roughly 9.25 years for the rising or setting full moon nearest to winter solstice to proceed from its maximum azimuthal north or maximum extremum to its southernmost to its southernmost azimuth, known as minimum extremum. Speculation regarding the reasons for the alignments have been offered. As these people would view the heavens, there was an order of things up there. What you had here contrasted to that. Some years it was too dry, too hot, too windy, too cold. If there was a way to transfer the orderly nature of the cosmos down onto what seems to be chaos that exists here, then you begin to then integrate at this place both heaven and earth. And this would be the center place. Philip Tuwalitsua, U.S. National Geodetic Survey, The Mystery of Chaco Canyon. And that is it for that at the moment. Later we will continue with the Fajata Boots, and I believe it probably goes into the constellation of Boots. So stay tuned. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and donate to the channel at $Sistahs or PayPal sistahs@gmail.com. Peace.